Today we're going to take a look at filling out the Form 2441. This is the form for child and dependent care expenses, also known as the daycare credit. Of course, as with all forms, we need to type in the name, and we're going to use John and Jane Doe, and of course John Doe's Social Security number. Will go in the upper right hand corner, which you will of course, as usual, double, triple, and quadruple check before you move on. To be able to get the child care credit, you need the care provider's name, address, and their identifying number. If they have a federal ID number, you would use that. If it's an individual, you would need their Social Security number. This means that if you take this credit, the IRS is going to expect to see that amount of income was reported on that person's or that organization's tax return. So if this is your mother and she doesn't want to report this, you cannot take the credit. Alright, so we're going to pretend that John and Jane Doe used ABC Child Care. Okay. And you would put the address, and the Social Security number or federal ID number of their organization. Then is the total that you paid that organization. So if John and Jane have 2 children that they paid for, and they paid a total of $4,000 for the year to ABC Child Care, this is how much total that they paid. Note under here is a section on receiving dependent care benefits. What this is talking about is that if your employer helped to pay for these benefits to ABC Child Care. Sometimes an employer has benefits for their employees where they help to pay for child care. If you receive this, it will be on your W-2, and you would then have to complete Part 3 on the back of this form. That is beyond the scope of this class, so we will not need to be doing that. Part 2, credit for the children, and this is where you're putting in the information about each child that went to ABC. So if John Jr. John Jr. and we'll assume the last name, and you would put that in, and you would put in John Jr.'s Social Security number, double, triple, quadruple check it. Then is how much expenses you incurred and paid for John Jr. So let's say the $4,000 that they paid was included for John and for Jane, Jane Jr. Okay, $2,000 was for John Jr. and $2,000 was for Jane Jr. So John Jr., we're going to put the $2,000 here. Now Jane was 13 or over years old. This credit, as we have discussed in the PowerPoint, is only for children under the age of 13. So Jane, young Jane, is over that age limit. So we cannot take the credit, the $2,000 that we paid for her, we cannot take that. Only the $2,000 we paid for John Jr. Line 3, add the amounts in column C of line 2. That's this 2,000. It says do not enter more than 3,000 for one qualifying person or 6,000 for two or more. So we have one qualifying child, and that is we can have anywhere up to $3,000, and we only have 2,000, so we'll put our 2,000 there. Line 4, enter your earned income. Your meaning whoever is listed first at the top of the return. John Sr. is listed first at the top of the return, so his earned income, remember, earned income is what you swept for, wages or self-employment. So we're going to say that John Sr. had $35,000 of earned income. Line 5, if married filing jointly, enter the spouse's earned income. Jane is listed second, so this means her earned income. If Jane was listed first, then her earned income would go in line 4, and John Sr.'s would go in line 5. Let us say that Jane had $20,000 of earned income. Line 6, enter the smallest of 3, 4, or 5. Well, obviously the $2,000 is the smallest of those from line 3, and so that goes on line 6. Line 7, enter the amount from Form 1040 line 38, which of course we know is AGI. And assuming that their wages was all of their income and that they had no adjustments, they had John had $35,000 and Jane had $20,000, and so they had $55,000 of AGI. Then we take a look at this chart below. Most credits are made for lower income people, and this is one of the few that people with middle class or higher incomes can be able to get this credit. And so we take a look at here, and it goes from 0 to no limit. Their $55,000 is in the above $43,000. And so we look across, and we're going to use that percentage. They're going to get 20%. Okay? So we're going to put that over here. They already have the decimal point there, so we're just going to put the 20 there. Okay? Line 9, multiply line 6 by the decimal amount on line 8. Okay, so we're going to take the 2,000 times the 20%. So that would be 400. Line 10, tax liability limit. Enter the amount from the credit limit worksheet in the instructions. We've talked about this worksheet when we talked about child tax credit. These are non-refundable credits, so you can only take the credit up to the amount of tax that you have. So you have to know how much is their tax. So we're going to take a look at that. Their AGI was $55,000. If we subtract out the standard deduction for married filing jointly of $12,400, we subtract out the exemptions for John and Jane Sr. and John and Jane Jr. That's 4 exemptions times 3,900 is $15,600, and we get down to their taxable income of $27,000. If I look that up for married filing joint filing status, their tax is $3,146. So they could have refundable credits up to that point, up to the $3,146. So that it would be the amount that would go in line 10. This is the maximum amount of credit that they would be able to take, because they cannot take their tax below 0. Okay? Line 11, credit for child and dependent care expenses. Enter the smaller of line 9 or line 10 here and on Form 1040, line 49. So the smaller of those two is the 400. We would then go to our Form 1040 on the back page, and on line 49 we would put this $400 and it would be subtracted. We would then be able to calculate out their child tax credit, which they get $1,000 for each of the two children because they're both under 17 years old, and that would go on line 52.